Glad to have you back now. Let's look at, turn attention to some other story, of course, some of that conversation now. The federal government has inaugurated the National Agricultural Technology and Innovation Policy to guide agric business development in Nigeria. This document was inaugurated by the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Mohammed Abubakar, in Abuja. According to report, the policy is a 6-year national agricultural policy strategy aimed at sustainable development of national technological and innovative capacity to fast-track import substitution. What impact will this policy have on food production in Nigeria? And is a real movement or moment Nigeria farmers have been waiting for? That, of course, is the big question waiting to be answered. Well, for further analysis now, let's welcome Dr. Leke Ebenezer, who is an economist. He joins us virtually. Thank you for your time, Dr. Ebenezer. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you for having me this morning.
Yeah, well, I believe you may have gone through the document or, read through what that document is meant for. But if you look at the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Mohammed, stating that the National Agricultural Technology and Innovation Policy document will emphasize the reduction of food and boost high potential value chains in agricultural investment. So what's your thought on this?
Okay, thank you very much for that. It's, important that at this time, I haven't gone through a lot of issues in Nigeria, particularly in the agricultural sector, that this kind of, policy is coming on. And, the content of the policy had been all the problems that have been identified both a long time ago and the recent development that are packaged together to, to come up with this new policy that the government is having. And of course, they've paid attention to some parameters that will, help the economy in terms of driving investment and also increasing exportation, because those are the two germane elements of this particular document, apart from the fact that it's going to provide food for the masses. But then, I have always been of the opinion that if we have policies like this and we have a long-term plan or even a short-term plan, the strategy that we are adopting, how well can we sustain that strategy, and the people that can, do it in such a way that the dividend of the policy will begin to translate to economic growth and development. That has always been my own challenge. But aside that, it is a very good move. In fact, apart from the statistical information attached to the provision of this policy, the government is also considering the fact that the African trade agreement that we are into.
Let me quickly come in, Dr. Leke. I mean, we will talk about the African trade agreement in a moment, but let's focus more on this particular document. And of course, if you recall, in 2015, the CBN placed a forex ban on over 41 items, including rice, poultry, eggs, tin fish, margarine, milk, and other dairy products. This was supposed to address the rate of importation of food into the country. But what do you think has changed since then? Because this document is also going to address the rate of food importation as well, and also to address the value chain or encourage value chain in the agric sector. But again, if you go back to 2015, the ban on those items, and of course this document, what do you think is likely to change this time?
Okay, thank you very much. What might likely change this time is because is the value chain productivity. In this new document, if you check very well, one of the targets is that if you are coming up with a policy that will productively engage every component of the value chain, it will not only drive employment, it will also drive productivity. And that is one of the germane backbone of this new policy. Like I said, is the primary aim is to drive investment and also to increase exportation. And for that to happen, all the components in the Agric value chain must be actively engaged, and then they must be extremely productive. So the government, in its sense, thought that if we are making a policy that does not drive the efficiency of the value chain, the ultimate goal may not be achieved. And so all of that has been put into consideration, and also considering that, look, why we banned some of what we banned was so that Nigeria as a country can see the need to produce some of those products, by ourselves. And so it is important that when government place a ban on importation, is to drive productivity in the sector, and that's included in this policy document.
This quite interesting document, of course, one must say, again, in a country where there's a lot of policy somersault, and of course, sometimes total abandonment in the case. This is another policy that will outlive this administration. But how sustainable, if I may ask, is this, seeing that this administration has about 6 months or thereabouts to leave the office? But we'll talk about that in a moment. But let's quickly take a break. When we come back, we'll get started on that note. We're glad to have you back. Let's continue on that note. Dr. Leke Ebenezer, economist, is still with us virtually. Thank you for your time, Dr. Leke. We will start from that note where I was asking, a country known for policy somersault. This is a very interesting, according to many, it's a good document, a good initiative. But then the challenge is that the current administration has about 6 months to go. What do you think is likely to happen to this document? How do you think we can preserve this document so that we can begin to, reap the harvest in 6 year time?
Okay, thank you very much. The documents had identified where there are major issues in the Agric sector, and they've tried to address that in the document, because the segment of the document captured the 4 basic areas in the value chain, ranging from the input, supply, production, processing, and then the marketing and trade. So they understand that the poor accessibility of improved seeding need to be addressed. The high cost of agrochemicals need to be addressed, and of course, difficulty that is involved in acquiring of land, especially for agricultural purposes. The document has also addressed that issue, and as well as the issue of climate variation. When looking at the production, they also try to make sure that the document address the poor irrigation system and low utilization of mechanized tools. And so, for me, I believe that this time around, there should be a high level of performance, because the government in itself have said, look, what do we need to do? What are the challenges in the value chain? And so they've tried to make sure that that document address that. And in the area of research, finance, and regulation, which is majorly part of the government, the policy is also looking into that to see that, look, research and development is germane when it comes to agricultural development, and financing is another important thing, and most importantly, regulation. So I am hoping that, having considered all of these variables in the policy document, we are hopeful that successive governments, because this government is already going, they will be able to follow that plan and come through with the dividend of this policy.
It's a conversation that will continue, not in this administration, of course, in the next administration as well. Talking about the finance part of this particular policy, it's very crucial. We know that the government, of course, through the CBN initiative has been, proactive. The anchor borrowers program is there. You also have some specialized packages for particular select sectors like the health, the agri sector, and all of that. Again, the question still remains that in the last 4 or 5 years, the CBN anchor borrowers program, is supposed to be perhaps productive more than expected. But some people have said the case we are seeing is different. The result, the output, the outcome of that plan or scheme is different. Now, how do we approach this finance issue? Who should we be talking to? Who should be engaged? Who should lead this conversation when we talk about financing and managing that finance? Some people have also talked about the fact that the Agric ministry is supposed to do something about that. Between the Agric ministry and the CBN, who is supposed to be leading this conversation?
Yes, the Ministry of Agric is supposed to be leading the conversation. You and I know that that's the essence of that ministry in the first place. But then, I think perhaps the federal government has seen that some of these ministries are not really perhaps up to their game, and they are not doing some things right. Of course, that's personal opinion. I'm not saying that's what it is. And they felt that, okay, for that conversation, the CBN should lead. You and I know that lately in our country, the CBN is taking a role of so many, so many ministries, which, for a lot of people, they are like, what is the business of CBN when it comes to issues like this? But then I am always looking at the angle of if we have a problem and we want to solve it, what is most important is the solution to the problem, perhaps not the way we solve the problem. So if the government feel that in the best interest of whoever of the citizen, the CBN needs to step up their game and handle the issue of financing when it comes to agricultural sector, for that sector to perform. So be it, as long as the sector is performing and the masses are getting the dividend of that performance. Be it the agricultural sector doing the management of the finance or the CBN, what someone like me is interested in is the outcome and result from that sector and the policy document as a whole.
Okay, let's wrap it up with this, Dr. Leke. Nigeria imported goods worth about 20 trillion last year alone. Well, economists say that Nigeria is importing too little compared to that. This document is supposed to address high rate of importation of food into the country. 20 trillion, if you put that into, for instance, into wheat production, or for instance, if you put that into maize or maybe rice production, of course, it will yield something. But again, how much is the country losing really? And how much do you think the country is going to be saving by the time this document, this policy is implemented?
Okay, thank you very much. Of course, our statistics have shown the area where we are not really doing well and the areas where we are really, and of course, that document was made available in the public. And so, like I said, one of the major reasons why this plan is coming up is for two fundamental reasons: to drive investment and also to increase exportation. And so, because government have seen that, look, we are really importing a lot, and anytime you are doing that, you are always at deficit, balance of payment deficit. And to avoid that, You just have to drive production in your agricultural sector. And so it's part of the major reason why this policy document is coming up, so as to address the issue of our importation and look at how we can take advantage of all what we have, so that we can save more, export, and then become more productive as a country. The statistics are there. Of course, the document is promising that in the next few years, we may be saving like 80% of what we are, the cost of importation in that sector, and then we will be able to increase our exportation above 65 to 70%. And so let's be hopeful that when the content of this policy are followed to the letter, we are going to be saving a lot from importation and gaining more money from exportation of our agri products.
Let's quickly analyze, assess the contribution of Agric sector to the overall GDP. Of course, the overall the data shows that the sector contributed about 23% to the overall GDP, but in actual and in real terms, when it compared to year on year, only averagely or marginally grew by more than 1%. That's about 1.2%. How significant is that? Some people say that was very poor. I mean, so, and how much of palliative? Can you hear me, Dr. Leke? Can you hear me? Well, I was asking you if you can hear me. I was asking you that if you look at the productivity from the agri sector in the second quarter of 2022, that's about 23%. But in real terms, compared to last year, it just averagely grew by 1.2% in the second quarter. But to some people, that's not significant enough. So what do you think we didn't do right? Yes, the document is here. We're considering that how to, implement it the right way. But what do you think we didn't do right? There's Anchor Boras program. There's so different many programs or policies in the agri sector, but it's yielding, little.
Yeah, why that? Of course, you and I know that what has largely contributed to that is the issue of security. Government, in itself, believe that if they do every other thing right, given the fact that some constants remain the same, the economy should grow, and the contribution of Agric should be significant to the GDP. But the issue of security has hampered the performance of the that sector, and that's why you can see that there is only a marginal increase, because for agricultural policies and investment and financing to be productive, security is number one. You have to get it right in that area. If from the time of planting to the time of harvesting, so if people are not secured, they won't be able to go to farm, and if they can't go to farm, of course, how do you expect them to plant? And then what are you expecting to harvest? So security affected the performance of that sector largely in the last few years. But then government has also included in this policy that the area of security will be taken seriously, so that the issue of agricultural performance in the GDP can be significant at this time.
Well, when we talk about value chain, Dr. Leke, again, there are different products we should begin to look at. For Nigeria, the value chain, of course, represents something that the ordinary Nigerian can have access to, or what is most commonly consumed in Nigeria here. So for you, what would that be, especially the one that you think we should be focusing on within the value chain ecosystem?
What we should be focusing on is because the agri sector is basically divided into four components, which is the input supply, the production, the processing, and of course, marketing and trade. So the truth is that if you don't pay attention to the quality of seed that you plant, and the climate, and of course agrochemicals that are used, that will affect the yield. And of course, if you are looking at production too, you have to pay attention to,
Right.
are we using mechanized tools that are supposed to be using? Are we doing adequate research
Right.
about crossbreeding plants? And of course, how well are we paying attention to diseases that can attack what you have planted? That has to do, very important, because
All right.
that has an attachment to the manufacturing sector, and that is going to generate a lot of employment. So for me, there's no part of the value chain you can consider insignificant. All of them are working together, and it's important that you pay attention to all. And the last one, which is marketing and trade.
All right. Okay. I think we just have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Dr. Leke Ebenezer, an economist, for your time on Business Breakfast. Well, we'll take a moment. When we return, of course, we'll look at the rate of migration from Nigeria. Of course, that's a focus of what we'll be looking at the fact that a lot of people are trying to migrate or travel out of their home country in search of greener pasture. Well, we'll consider the implication of that and the economic impact on the economy. Please stay with us.